What does executive presence mean? Maybe you've looked at the books, maybe you've taken a look at some videos and you still feel lost, like you're not exactly sure what it means. Well, in this very short workshop today, I'm going to share with you what it means to have an executive presence as a woman in leadership, some of the challenges that come up specifically for us as women as we are trying to develop this skill, and then what you are not being told about executive presence. There's so many things that happen in our world as women, and particularly on the professional level, and oftentimes there's a lot of information out there, but you're not being told exactly what you need to know as it relates to your executive presence. So we're going to uncover all that today. This is a live video. So if you are watching this video at this particular point, you are more than likely watching the replay. And so I'm glad that you're here and you're present. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them to me. If you can give me just a few moments, I want to make sure I interact with everyone that is joining us live today. And then I will go into some of the very critical aspects of developing your executive presence as a woman in leadership. So as people start joining, I'll say hello and we'll go into the instruction from there. So I encourage you to get a pen and a notebook because you're going to want to take some notes during our session today. Now, one of the things that comes up oftentimes with executive presence is that people are just not sure exactly what it is. There is this perception, this almost in the form of a confusing topic that people are not quite sure what executive presence means. And I want to tell you that, yes, this makes complete sense because the information that's out there as it relates to executive presence is completely confusing. If you have read something on executive presence and have been confused by it, let me know in the comments below because I personally have, and I have been completely baffled. And this is why I want to share with you my over 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive, as a manager, as a director, a public speaker, and an executive coach to help you uncover and unmystify what it means to have an executive presence. Now, there is several books out there that talk about executive presence. There's several posts here, specifically on LinkedIn, that talk about having your executive presence. And some of the information that comes up just is not at the level of being understandable in a very simplistic way. So I have seen formulas as it relates to executive presence. So specifically, I have seen formulas where executive presence goes into these three categories. It goes into gravitas as being 60% of it, 30% is communication, 10% is your appearance. I've read definitions that are literally a paragraph long that talk about executive presence. And I understand and I completely appreciate why this topic is so completely confusing because the information is being presented to you in a very, very complex type of way. Now, I do want to preface this by saying, and I'm just going through comments now. I do want to preface this by saying a few things. First, executive presence is not complicated. It is not something that is extremely complex. What I've found is that individuals that may have been in positions that are maybe not at the point where they've been in those, I would say, more high stakes, high pressure situations, they can make it more complex, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be complicated whatsoever. I define executive presence very simply, and I define it as follows. Executive presence is your ability to inspire and influence others as a leader. That's it. That's my very humble opinion in terms of a definition that really encompasses executive presence. So it's not complicated, but it is a skill that you do have to develop and you do have to learn how to master. So give me just a moment and I'm going to look through comments that we have. And if I see any, I'm going to respond. And if not, I'm going to continue. Okay, I don't see anything at the moment, and that's all right. If you all have any comments, feel free to let me know. Place them in the chat below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can for you in our short time together to help you be able to start to uncover your executive presence in terms of how you can showcase it to yourself and to your teams. Now, we talked about the definition. I gave you my very humble opinion in terms of the definition of executive presence so that it does not feel so complex and so challenging for you to understand. I want to know from you a couple of questions. This is where you want to get your pen and your paper and get it out and take a couple of notes. So the first question I have for you is, what are your thoughts of executive presence? When you hear the word executive presence, what is the first sentence or maybe the first word that comes to your mind? Let me know in the comments below, what are some things that come up for you when you think about executive presence? So I'll give you just a moment to put a couple things in the chat and we'll see what comes up there. And a follow-up question to that, while you're thinking about executive presence and specifically how what it means to you, is to think about your executive presence. So when you think about your executive presence, how do you feel about it? Do you feel pretty good about it? Do you feel like you could probably use some assistance? You may need to enhance it a bit, or do you feel like it's just not it's not existent at this moment? And if it's not existent, that's okay. That's why you're watching this video and gaining some insight in terms of what you can do as it relates to your executive presence. So let me know, how are you feeling about your executive presence? How do you feel about it? Do you feel like could it be improved, or do you feel pretty good about it? So put it in the comments below or write it quietly on your paper. And my follow-up question is, and this is very, very important, when you think about your leaders, the people that you watch, perhaps you watch them on YouTube, maybe you watch them online on different media outlets, those individuals that truly, truly inspire you and make you want to take action and keep you motivated. I want to know from you, who are some of those leaders? Who are those leaders that are helping to inspire you? And I'm going to share with you a secret as to why in a little bit. So place those in the comments below or write those down. Who are those leaders that inspire you and why? What is it about this leader when they speak to you that inspires you to want to do more? All right, let me take a look at the comments below. Okay. Miss Castro says power. All right. Thank you so much for joining. So power is one thing that comes up also. Okay. So power comes up as it relates to executive presence. Anything else that you all can think about as it relates to executive presence? What's the first word that comes to mind? And then the follow-up is, if you have a leader in mind that inspires you, that really excites you, who is the leader and why do they inspire you? Let us know in the comments below. This will be very, very helpful for us as we're talking about executive presence. And the reason why is because I'm going to share with you that what you are being inspired about as it relates to your specific leader will have a lot to do with you developing your executive presence. So Ms. Castro said non-existent. That's okay. That's why you are here today. So we will absolutely talk about executive presence, particularly as a woman in leadership, to help you gain a foundation in terms of what you need to do. So don't worry, we're going to get a couple things ready for you today. All righty. Now, we talked a bit about executive presence and why it's complex. There's a lot of complex information out there. People break it down into formulas and they have very long technical jargon to describe executive presence. And for me, as being in a leadership role, I've been a C-suite, I've been a director, a manager for over 20 years. I talk about real strategies and actual real scenarios that happen. And oftentimes when you have those very complex, very highly academic definitions of executive presence, I can't speak it in that way. I can only speak to executive presence in the way that I have learned it, and that is by trial and error. And I've actually been in those very friendly and very contentious situations as a leader. And so I can speak to you from this is actually what really happens in the world. So we have another comment. So, all right. So thank you so much, Ms. Castro. Michelle Obama, very good. So this is a leader that inspires Ms. Castro. Fantastic. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And what I will do just for you is on my YouTube channel, I will take a look at some of Michelle Obama's videos, and I'm going to try to pull out some of the techniques that she is probably doing that you may be aware of or may not be aware of, especially from the public speaking side, that you can actually start doing in your everyday conversations so that you can start to mirror those techniques, strategies, and topics that she's mentioning and deliver it in a way to where you are developing your executive presence. So I will absolutely do that for you. And I appreciate you so much for placing that leader here. All right, awesome. So if y'all have any other leaders, let me know. I will do videos just for you on my YouTube channel and talk a bit more about those particular individuals and pull out what they are doing that makes them really stand out and really causes you to want to be motivated by them. You may be wondering, well, what does this have to do with executive presence? These individuals, these leaders like Michelle Obama in this case that was mentioned by Ms. Castro, these individuals, they have an executive presence. They have that presence. As I mentioned, my very humble definition of executive presence is your ability to inspire and to influence other people as a leader. It's very simply, that's the definition that I have. So those individuals, those leaders are the reasons why you feel inspired, because there's something that they're doing that is really making you want to be inspired by them. Now, let's talk about what happens when you have developed your executive presence. Now, this is where you want to get your pen and paper and take a couple of notes, because you definitely want to write these things down. So when you have an executive presence, there's a few things that happens to you professionally as a woman in leadership. One of the first things is that you start to become more influential. So more people will start to notice you. Sometimes people, when they do not have an executive presence, they feel like they're being overlooked and they're not quite sure why. They're working really hard, they're head down, working all the time, but they constantly are being overlooked in their roles and they're not sure why. So when you have an executive presence, you will definitely present yourself as being more confident. You will absolutely be able to be present for more opportunities, because the people that stand out are the ones that stand out for opportunities. And so this is something that you definitely want to have as you are developing your executive presence. This is very, very important. You start to make a really big impact because people start to notice you. You start to become the person that people want to talk to as it relates to specific topics. So all of these things will come together when you have an executive presence. What I've seen clients do and what I've helped my clients do is to not only develop their executive presence, but it also helps them to earn more income as well, because they're able to articulate themselves and communicate in a very concise way to have that inspiration, that influence to the rest of their teams. So this is what happens when you start to develop your executive presence. These 4 things will happen, amongst other amazing things that will occur for you when you start to develop your executive presence. Now, before I go into what women, specifically us as women, experience and what we've maybe been told and why we struggle with executive presence, let me see what's going on in our comment section. So, Dr. Forsyth, hello, welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here today. So, Dr. Forsyth said a leader is someone who captivates the audience and their presence demands your full attention. Fantastic. Wonderful summary, Dr. Forsyth. And this is exactly why it's so important for us to understand what is executive presence. Executive presence, to me, I know there's a lot of books out there that talk about, as I mentioned earlier, it's a formula, it's 60% gravitas, 30% communication, and 10% appearance. I completely disagree with all of that. If you look up the definition, first of all, of gravitas, it is Latin. And there's a lot of words that we speak about in the professional language that are in Latin. But do you know what gravitas is? I had to look it up in the definition so I knew what the word was. So it makes it already complex because you're trying to figure out what is this word. The second part of it is when you look up the definition for gravitas, the definition is more of a seriousness in manner or in tone. And from my over 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive and a director and a manager, that seriousness is important. There are times when you have to be serious as a leader, but as Dr. Forsyth said, you have to captivate the audience. How can you captivate an audience if you are being very, very serious all of the time? This is something to think about because there's a lot of information on executive presence. And as I mentioned, some of it comes from individuals who have maybe not been in those very contentious, those very hot seat, I would say, or high stakes situations. So they're speaking at it from the perspective of someone from the outside looking in. But I'm sharing with you that this is exactly what happens. You do have to be able to captivate that audience, which is why it's important to know which leaders inspire you, because we're going to actually plan to learn more from them so I can show you what they're doing specifically to help you do it in your everyday conversations. So I appreciate that, Dr. Forsyth. Okay, now we've talked a bit about executive presence. We've talked about why it's confusing. I've given you my very humble opinion in terms of my definition of executive presence. So now let's talk about why do women struggle with this? Why do women struggle with executive presence? Now, I do want to preface this by saying it's not just women that struggle with executive presence. Men struggle with it too. We all struggle with it because of the reasons that I mentioned a moment ago. People are really not sure of what it is. How do you develop it? What does it mean? Because there's these complex, very academic-like definitions of the word that are sometimes hard to understand in your everyday setting. So why do women struggle with it? There's two reasons really why. One of the reasons why women struggle with their executive presence includes the fact that many of us are transitioning into these senior leadership roles. So this will be your senior VPs, this will be your C-suite executives, your directors, and etc. Now, if you've watched any of my live videos or if you've seen any of my master classes that I'll have a special offer for you toward the end of the presentation today, what happens is there's a history of us as women in the workforce. And we've transitioned from different roles to being on switchboards, to working in factories, to transitioning into these roles around about the 1990s. And so you see women that have been migrating into these more predominantly male occupied roles. And now we have women that are present. So why is this an issue? Many times women think that the executive presence, you have to have a suit. Like you have to have a suit. You have to have some type of suit jacket, suit pants, suit outfit. And the reason why, if we really think deeply about this, and I'm coming at this from an executive coach standpoint, is because men have been in those roles. So as women, now that we're transitioning into those higher level senior leadership type of roles, we are trying to adapt to what's already been there. And what's already been there have been men that have been wearing suits. And so a lot of times my clients think, oh, as executive presence, I need to make sure I have a suit. I have to have a suit on at all times. And that's not necessarily the case. You don't have to wear a suit. We do not have to mirror men to feel like we are presenting ourselves as the leaders and as executives. All you really need to do is wear a professional outfit that reflects your authentic self. If you want to wear a business suit, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want you all as women to think that you absolutely have to do this because this is just what it takes to develop an executive presence. This is one of the misconceptions as to why women really struggle with their executive presence, because we feel like we have to fit into the boxes that were already there, that were men, and dress ourselves accordingly, even though we're not dressing as men. But it's that mindset that we think, oh, I have to be in a suit. And that's just because men have been in suits. Men have always been in these roles, and now we're transitioning into them. So we kind of feel like, well, I probably should just wear a suit, but you may not necessarily have to. And that's just what I've seen my clients do and what I've seen some individuals struggle with also, as relates specifically to women in executive presence. The other aspect that women tend to struggle with is how to communicate in their tone of voice. Now, I have seen a lot, and I want to know from you all in the chat, what are some things that you have seen in your high stakes conversations as it relates to executive presence and people trying to show themselves as leaders? I'm curious to know what your what your perspective has been. What I've seen a lot of women try to do is they'll try to have a very, very, I would say, deep type of voice. Now, there's times when you need to adjust your tone of voice. And I talk about this at length on my content here on LinkedIn, and then also on my YouTube channel as well. There's times you need to elevate your voice and lower your voice and have more depth, but you do not necessarily need to feel like you have to mirror or speak like really deep voice to get someone's attention. I do that as an exaggeration because there's some women out there that feel like they have to have that type of voice just because, as I mentioned, many of the roles that we're transitioning into have been heavily occupied by men. And you do not have to do that. All you need to do is bring your authentic self to your specific type of role, talk your normal way. But keep in mind, there are strategic times when you do need to elevate. You may need to lower your voice depending on what you're talking about. So, for instance, as it was mentioned earlier by Ms. Castro, she mentioned that Michelle Obama is somebody that inspires her. There are times, and I've listened to Michelle Obama speak many times as a public speaker, there are times when she elevates her voice, and there's times when she lowers her voice. There are strategic times as public speakers to do this. Why is this important? Because when you're developing your executive presence, people will want to be captivated by you depending on what you're saying and how you're saying it. If you're speaking in a very monotone type of voice, it makes it very difficult for people to want to say, what is she talking about? I would just want to hear it. Sometimes it's hard to do that. So this is something that you absolutely want to work on. And if you need some support, just contact me for a strategy session. I believe I have a link in my profile, and we can have a quick chat and talk about where you are as a woman and help you get over this. Now, before I go into the last part, which is what you need to work on as it relates to developing your executive presence. These are the strategies that you want to write down notes quickly because I'm going to go through them very fast. I want to see what's going on in our chat. So Dr. First Life said, I've seen a firmer, louder voice. Sometimes softness is seen as weakness. So that's a very, very good point, Dr. First Life. And thank you so much for bringing that up because softness can sometimes seem as a weakness. It just depends strategically on how you are using it. And you do have to have more of a very confident, and I would say along the lines of an affirmative type of voice. If you're speaking softly, like you're afraid, like, oh, I don't know if I should say something or not, I'm not quite sure, then absolutely people will see that as a weakness. Having a firmer voice, affirmative voice, I would say, is definitely always more helpful. But sometimes I've seen the opposite where people will really try to lower their voice very low to try to mimic individuals or male counterparts in the room. And we don't necessarily have to do that as women. We just speak our normal way and be able to communicate in a very confident manner. That is what really showcases an executive presence. Now, what I want to say in the time that we have left is that there are a few strategies. These are some things that if you have an executive presence, or if it's not existent, or if you have it and you need to enhance it, this is really what I have found and my experiences that have been able to help individuals and leaders showcase executive presence. Now, I'm sharing this from you, not only as a C-suite executive, not only as a director, but I've been on the news before and I've interacted with congressional leaders in the national level and the state level. And so I've been in those very friendly and very contentious situations where I've seen executive presence at its highest level. And so I want to share with you what I have learned over the past 20 years to help you to start develop your executive presence. Now, some of the things that you are not being told as it relates specifically to your executive presence, as I mentioned, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of jargon out there that talks about executive presence, but I'm going to actually give you the real executive presence today. Are you ready? So this is what you need to consider. First, in terms of developing your executive presence, you will want to develop some form of charisma. Charisma is the opposite of gravitas. Okay, gravitas is something that is talked about a lot in executive presence, especially in books and etc. In my opinion, this is just me and giving you my insight. Charisma is very, very important. Charisma, if you look at the definition for it in the Oxford Languages Dictionary, it talks about to inspire devotion from others. So just as Dr. Forsyth mentioned earlier about this topic, captivating the audience, Ms. Castro mentioned about Michelle Obama. It is that devotion, that inspiration you're getting from other people. You need this for an executive presence. People have to be drawn to you. They want to be around you. If you are showcasing gravitas all the time and you're very serious all the time, no one wants to be around someone that's serious all the time. So this is something that as I mentioned, I don't agree with, and this is from my perspective of what I've seen being at higher levels in my career. Now, communication is critically important. There's different types of communication. I'm going to go through them very quickly. So you have communication in the verbal format. So this is what you are actually speaking and saying. How you are saying your words is very, very important. If you need some support on that, let me know. I'll be happy to help you. Just contact me or send me a DM. The second is your nonverbal communication. This specifically is related to how you are communicating with your body language. How are you holding your eye contact? What are your lips doing? What are your eyebrows doing? What are you shifting gait? What's going on? Your body language, these are your nonverbal gestures that actually contribute to your executive presence. They can either help your executive presence or they can hurt your executive presence. Now, before I go into the other two, I want to tell you that I have a bonus for you all. I'm going to share with you the number one reason why people struggle with their executive presence after I'm finished with telling you what you're not being told. So you're not being told that you need charisma. Oftentimes you're not being told about communication, or communication is a small part of it. Communication is a huge part of executive presence. So it really is. Your appearance. Now, I know the formula I mentioned to you earlier said appearance was 10%. I'm sorry, appearance is a lot more than that. And I'm not saying this in a way to sound vain, but your appearance is a very important part about your executive presence. So let me give you a scenario. Let's say I came in and I have my suit on and my hair looks all like I had a really rough hair day. Will you take me seriously? Probably not. You probably would not take me seriously at all. So your appearance is very important. And that is actually a way of communication that people are not telling you about, that how you appear communicates an executive presence also. And then finally, your written communication is very important too. So written communication, how you're writing, how you're composing your emails, your letters, and et cetera, and your documents is important also. And then there's a couple other things I want to share with you that you're not being told also as it relates to your executive presence. And those are the following. Your energy. You have to be very energetic as best as you can. Now, no one has energy and are highly energetic all the time. But for the most part, if you're trying to really showcase your executive presence, you have to do what it is for you personally to get your mindset in that very positive, upbeat state, because that's how people are drawn to you. They're drawn to people that have that energy, that just feel like, oh, I just want to hang out with them. And I just want to be able to speak with them and have a conversation with this leader and talk about different topics. So energy is very, very important. Another aspect of your executive presence that's important is to be able to be decisive. So not indecisive, decisive. When something happens and you have a complex situation that is occurring, you have to make a decision very, very quickly, very fast. This is what executives do. This is how you showcase your executive presence. Being able to handle pressure is important also. So handling pressure is a part of being an executive. This is a part. If you don't have an executive presence, it's good to start understanding what are your triggers. What are the things that make you upset? So when it happens, you can manage it as best you can. But handling pressure is a very important part of developing your executive presence. And you also want to be able to think on your feet. Thinking on your feet, I have a video on my YouTube channel that talks about this, but this is very, very important. Also, you have to be kind of quick-witted when it comes to developing your executive presence. And if it's something that you're struggling with, then just reach out to me. We'll come up with a plan and talk about how we can help you to do that. Now, I promised you I was going to share with you a bonus. This is extremely important. This is the number one reason why people struggle with their executive presence. Number one, there's nothing else but this. It is consistency. You have to be the same person. As I say on my channel all the time, if the sky is beautiful and blue outside, you need to be the same person if it's thunderstorming outside, if you are having a great day or a rough day, especially when you're communicating with your team. Now, of course, we all know life happens and we get thrown off. That's fine. But when you are trying to develop your executive presence, consistency is the key. If you can be consistent in how you're speaking with your team, regardless of what's going on, that automatically makes your executive presence go way up, because people know that regardless of what happens, my leader is going to communicate with me the same way. And this, I will tell you, I've seen C-suite executives struggle with this specifically, and they're not able to really make this work for them. Now, this is a really great summary in terms of what you need to start developing your executive presence. So I want to take a look in the chat really quickly and see what comments came up. So Dr. Forsyth said, I think it's because it's been ingrained in us women to mimic our male counterparts to earn respect. Yes, absolutely, Dr. Forsyth. That is a very, 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 very powerful statement that you made. And this is the reason why women specifically struggle with their executive presence, because as I mentioned, our transition into these roles in terms of being a senior leader or as a C-suite or as a director or manager, etc., it's relatively new. It's relatively new. All of this transition started to happen in the 1990s. That's not that long ago for many of us. And we weren't told this is how you can conduct yourself as a woman in professional settings. We were pretty much the only women in the room. That happens all the time. We are one of a few women in the room. And as Dr. Forsyth said, we feel like we have to mimic our male counterparts because that's all that's been in the rooms have been male counterparts. Now we're transitioning into these roles and there's more women. And so we're just basically picking up and mirroring what we have seen in the past. And this is the reason why people feel like they have to be this way. This is why it's really important and very important for women to understand really what does it take to showcase your executive presence. And I shared with you just a few items to have the ability to give you some foundation, a couple things to write down to start working on now. Now, if this is something that you are wanting to learn more about, perhaps you're tired of being overlooked at your job, or maybe you're trying to, make a transition into a different field, but you're having to struggle to do so. Or maybe you're trying to transition into the promotion, but it's just not happening for you. And you're wondering, well, what is going on? Most of the times we need to work on your executive presence. And so if you want some support, you're always welcome to just DM me. You can contact me here on LinkedIn at Dr. Jacinta Lamantai, on Instagram at Excite Excellence, or you can reach out to me on Gmail. I have exciteexcellence@gmail.com. And I also have a business line. You're also welcome to contact me there. It's 954-909-7155. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you and talk about how we can get you to that next level. Now, for those of you who stayed to the end, I do want to mention that if you are trying to increase your executive presence and you want to start working on how you're communicating with other people, I have a special promotion just for you. It's going to be for the next couple of days. It is a special promotion for a masterclass that I have, and the masterclass is specifically for women leaders as it relates to executive communication. It is a highly viewed masterclass. I've had a lot of great feedback on it, and it will help you to give you some foundation for you to get started in terms of how to start that big piece of communication as it relates to developing your executive presence, because executive communication is a critically important part of this process. Now, if you want the code for it, I will share it with you so that those who are watching the replay, you're welcome to take a look at it. It's at a special promotion just for the next couple of days or so. So definitely you want to take advantage of that while it's not being at a full price, but you have to put the promo code in. The promo code for it is EXEC37. So it's capital EXEC 37. So 37 is the actual dollar amount for it. The course itself, the masterclass is typically $97. So it will be at $37 if it's something that you're interested in. Now, I do have a lot of content that's on my YouTube channel that specifically goes into a lot of detail. So if you're looking for some additional support and some other free resources, then definitely take a look at my YouTube channel. It's at Excite Excellence. I have a lot of content there. You're welcome to subscribe if you like the information so that you don't miss out on notifications. I typically go live on there Tuesday through Fridays to provide insight. And so one of the things that I will be doing, especially since it was mentioned today by Ms. Castro, is I will be doing some pre-recorded videos of leaders just like Michelle Obama, just as she mentioned. And so I will put some things together, take out a couple of videos that she has done just to show you what specifically is she doing to inspire you. And so if you can pull out what she's doing to inspire you, then you can use those same strategies and techniques to inspire other people. And this will absolutely help you be able to start developing your executive presence. And for those of you watching the replay, this is something I enjoy doing. This is the why my business is here. This is why I'm supporting women in leadership, to really help you all to bring these very complicated conversations that come up and make it to where it makes sense. And I want you all to stand out. I say on my channel all the time, people become great by how they communicate. And if you can communicate at that higher level, then you will automatically stand out from everyone else as a leader, as an individual, to make that big impact on the world. Sometimes we just need someone to help us and show us this is what you can try to do, and to use your own talents. You're very talented, you're very intelligent as a woman in leadership. And that's why you're watching this video, because you want to do more, and you want to not be untold this information. You want to know what's going on and what you should do, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of things you have not been told about executive presence. And I hope that I was able to provide you with some insight there today. So let me take a look at the chat. Okay, so let's see. LinkedIn user, I don't know your name, but I'm glad you're here. It just says on my end, LinkedIn user. It says, think about the light you carry, lead with that light, because light begets light. Absolutely. That is so amazing. And I appreciate you for sharing that. And this is very helpful. And this is the reason why we have to do this. As I mentioned, as women in leadership, we have not been sometimes in these specific roles. So it's very, very important for us to be able to help other people along the way. Now, I know there was a couple other messages that came through. I saw Ms. Castro said, thank you. Absolutely. You're so welcome. So you may want to just subscribe to my YouTube channel, because more than likely I will do that there. I've done a similar video, not for Michelle Obama, but the format is similar. When we had the presidential debate previously, I did a very brief synopsis of the candidates, what they were doing and what they did not do in terms of public speaking, so that you can pull out some of those. So you'll see that on my channel also, that says presidential debate. And I'll do a similar type of format as it relates to Michelle Obama. So she will be my first leader that I'm taking a look at. All right, and I'm going through this. And this, okay, the LinkedIn user said, my favorite quote from Michelle Obama, and that's what the quote was. Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you so much. It came in a little bit late on the comments, so I apologize for that. So let me take a look. Oh, Ellen, this is Ellen. Okay, hello, Ellen. I'm so glad you were able to join. I'm so glad you're here. Ellen has been so interactive with so much of my content, and she actually attended one of our master classes as it relates to executive communication. So thank you, Ellen. That's a very good comment. Absolutely. If y'all have any other questions as it relates to executive presence, maybe some questions that you have that you're not quite sure of how to do it, or maybe you just are not sure communication wise what you should do, let me know. And as I mentioned, if you all have any leaders that you want me to do something about, do a video just for you all, and I will pull out what they're doing to inspire you. I will absolutely show you, so that you can actually do those type of conversations with other people, and it will automatically help you to stand out. And especially for Ms. Castro, this will absolutely help you with your executive presence based on what you mentioned earlier. I will help you with that. I do also have a lot of different options to support you with. So I have my YouTube channel. There's a lot of free resources there. If you go to the masterclass I mentioned to you, it's actually listed on exciteexcellence.org. It is under products and services. So you'll see that, and then you'll see the masterclass. The price is $97. But when you put in the code I mentioned to you, exec37, the price will go down to $37, so that you can purchase that masterclass to help you start communicating at that higher level. Let me see what else is going on in the chat. So Ellen said hi and smiley face. Yes, Ellen, so good to see you. Well, virtually speak with you again. So I appreciate you all for being here. Let me know if there's anything else you want to learn more about, specifically as it relates to being a woman in leadership. My expertise is communicating at a higher level. So I've been in the more challenging situations. So if you have a challenging situation that has came up, that's my expertise. I deal with the hard things. I deal with the very hard, complicated situations that come up: office politics, public speaking, communication, leadership, that is what I can support you with. This is what I do in my business all the time. So if you have anything that comes up, feel free to let me know. Just DM me here on LinkedIn or any platform that you're watching this on, and I'd be happy to support you on your journey and help you get to that next level in your career. And let me know if there's any other topics you want to learn more about. On LinkedIn, I'm going to be doing live topics at least once a month on LinkedIn. I'm doing live topics on YouTube Tuesday through Friday. So I do it there. But if you have any topics specifically that you want me to cover for you next month, I'll be happy to do it on LinkedIn, and I will absolutely give you a shout out on that as well. All right. So Dr. Forsyth said, thank you for this. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you're here today. And I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate all of you for being able to contribute to the discussion and provide some really great insights to help everyone, especially women in leadership, to be at that next level. We're here to grow each other. And as Ella mentioned earlier, light begets light. And I agree with that 100%. We have to help each other along the way so that we can go to that next level and make that big impact on the world that I know that you all are destined to do. So let me know if you have any comments, any questions, especially for those of you who are watching the replay. I'm here to support you. You have many ways to reach out to me and ask me any questions. I'll be happy to have a call with you and just talk. We'll talk about it, see where you are, and get you to that next level in your career. I know it can be challenging out there, and I know how you can feel very frustrated when you don't know what to do. Feel free to please take advantage of the very good things and the mistakes I have made on my way. When I was developing my executive presence, I didn't know what executive presence was. I just knew that I had to act a different way, especially when I was working as a director and especially when I was working as a C-suite executive. I had to just act differently, and that's how I developed my executive presence, and that's how I've been able to do so much. All right, absolutely. You're so welcome. Thank you, Dr. Cinta. I appreciate that comment, and I appreciate you all for being here today. Feel free to share this video with anyone, any other women in leadership that you know of that may need some support or that may have been caught up in the executive presence confusion, as many of us are caught up in. It happens all the time. This video is actually going to stay on my LinkedIn. I'm not going to be deleting it or repurposing it. It is here just to support the community. I know executive presence is something that is very important, especially for women in leadership, and it's something that we talk about here specifically on LinkedIn. And I see what's on LinkedIn, and it's very confusing, and I can completely see why people are confused about executive presence, because there's just so many things we're not being told, and I uncovered a lot of that here today in our live. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next video. If you need any support, let me know, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions.